Hello, welcome back to the Tears of Fire podcast, a podcast where I go over The Last Dragon Chronicles by Chris Lacey. Today we'll be covering chapters 25 through 28 of Firestar. Thanks for flying on in. I hope your way was safe with no turbulence. With that, let's get into the show. Last week we left off with Russ, Zanna, and Tutiga in the Arctic letting Ingvar go. There was a freak storm out of nowhere, which caused Russ to lose sight on Zanna, and when everything cleared, she was gone. Disappeared, and now we pick up with the aftermath of that. We're going to start with chapter 25, The Picture on the Wall. The scene opens up pretty quiet, dark, and a little eerie. We just see a little girl sitting in the open mouth of a cave. We get the picture that it's pretty dark and damp, but there's warmth through the cave given off by Gwain's remains. A couple of paragraphs in, after we see the girl sulking, we come to find out that it's Lucy. Gwilanna flies in her raven form and starts complaining. Starts saying terrible slurs, calling the bears names, stupid, things of this nature, just showing her frustration, kind of talking to herself, saying that the bears are starting to gang up, work together. Ingvar is going against her and her wishes, and that Zanna is now under the bear's spell. During this time when Gwilanna's ranting, Lucy's looking around the cave. She comes across some old cave paintings that look like they've been there for a while. They depicted Inuit people, one lady that seems to be getting praised amongst the others, and a lot of bears. Lucy starts to ask questions, and Gwilanna is starting to sit there and berate Lucy as if she's too stupid to understand. She asks if her mom has never told her the story. Lucy asks if the girl in the picture that's being depicted is Guinevere. Gwilanna gets pretty upset and starts telling her the story. She says, "No, that's my daughter. I made her out of clay, hair, and the blood of my own womb," saying that this is the revered daughter Gwendolyn, the chosen princess to be, that people revered her back in her time, and yet she for some reason chose to go live with the bears. The scene kind of cuts off right there, and there's no word whatsoever from Gwilanna to Lucy on why she's telling her this, or why Gwendolyn decided to go live with the bears. So we're kind of left in this weird limbo state, wondering what's going on. I don't think we go back there. So it's kind of a short chapter. We're just getting into this part of the section, letting us know what's going on with Lucy. But that brings us to chapter 26, A Curious Void. And this chapter starts off the next day when David's waking up, and he had told Liz that he was going to go to Bacon's house to talk to him, see if he can learn anything about the new Firestar that's been showing up in constellations slash just space, or the seeable space that we're not used to. As David is asking Bacon, Bacon is in his study cleaning everything. He's in an apron, rubber gloves, and trying to be covered head to toe so he doesn't get what he calls lacquered on his pants and doesn't want to ruin them because they're $60. Which back then, when this book was written in the early 2000s, I want to say around 2005, $60 would have been a lot, especially for pants. I understand why he's particular about it. David's asking questions about the universe and how it was created. Bacon tells him about the Big Bang, and how essentially we can know everything except for 1/100000th of a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang. The Big Bang was just a release of enormous energy, and Bacon's most sensible explanation for it was the breath of God. Capital G, God. David takes this with a grain of salt, but tells David about Liz's explanation that God is actually a dragon named Godith, but that she believes that the universe was created through breath as well, almost as if it had a rippling effect. Bacon isn't really rude, but he says that Mrs. P has fanciful thoughts and beliefs. but he tells David to think deeper. He explains that with the Big Bang, it created the universe using stardust, and it took a long while for everything to conjugate together and make the 92 elements that we know today. But he said that only makes up 10% of the known universe, that the rest of the 90% is dark matter, and it's something that we can't see or comprehend. This gives David even more questions and confuses him beyond belief. He doesn't know what to ask next and is just staring silently at Mr. Bacon. He asks him about a new star showing up, but Bacon says that that's not possible. It would take thousands, almost millions of years for something to be created that big, and that we're more likely to see one dying. A dying star is called a supernova, and that it would take thousands of years for that light to come make it to here. Bacon doesn't really have an answer for a new star, but David also doesn't tell him about it, or ask him about it directly. While they're deep in this conversation, while Mr. Bacon and David were deep in the conversation, they were interrupted by the phone ringing. When Bacon answers, he recognizes Liz's voice, and Liz asks for David. When David's talking to Liz, he can hear her being extremely sad and described as sobbing through the phone, or stifling one sob. So she's crying, and she just tells David that she needs to see him. She needs to come home soon, please. David gets a little spooked, and David senses something is up and wants to get home, so he tells Bacon thank you for his help and gets up promptly to leave. I don't really know what Liz could be crying about. I mean, we get in the next chapter, so we do, but at this point when I was reading it, if she wasn't crying and sobbing when Lucy was taken, I don't know what could be bigger in her life. Maybe something to do with the dragons. Maybe Gwaine was broken again or taken, or one of the special dragons was hurt. Maybe something happened to Grockle. I wasn't quite sure, but for Liz to be crying over something that's not her daughter seems a little strange to me. That's neither here nor there. I'd love to talk to Chris about what was going on in his mind for Liz, or what he was thinking Liz's thought process was behind this whole thing. So that'll be a question for Chris when he comes on eventually. But that's going to bring us to chapter 27, Bad News for David. When David walks in, Liz is pretty calm. She asks David to sit down, and she's trembling just a little bit. David is hesitant, doesn't listen at first, but once Liz asks him to sit down again, he listens. And Liz just tells him that she's sorry. There was a call from the research center, and all that she knows is that something happened to Zanna. She's gone. David starts freaking out. He immediately runs over to the phone and punches in the number to the research lab. Russ answers after quite a long time. I think David says that the phone rings for 8 little jingles. And I mean, I've never counted to see how many times a phone actually rings before it goes to voicemail, but I feel like 8 was a lot. It must have been on the last ring. Once Russ answers, David just starts bombarding him with questions. How could you? Why didn't you? Where did you? Things of this nature. But Russ wasn't really having much of it. He explained to David that there was a freak snowstorm. He couldn't see anything. Tatuga wet himself and was freaked out and frozen as well. And then the Raven. David gets shocked and completely silent at the mention of the Raven. I think he's putting 2 and 2 together about what he was writing and the current events, which we had just talked about. So in the last section, with Liz and him saying that that's the key to all this and their victory. So I don't know what's taking David so long to write. I know Liz said that he wouldn't be as powerful without Gadzooks and his instruments, but as long as he's making some kind of attempt, he's got to be affecting the outcome in some way. So I would think that he would be writing something as this is going, even if he's doing 12 different variations of the same story just to see which one works out the best. But I'm sure something will catch, because it can't all just be Gadzooks. David has to have some form of innate ability. I mean, that's what Gwilanna was saying, that he's got a certain flow with the universe that others don't. So I'm sure if him and Gadzooks kind of work together, even without the pad, they can write a story that can affect him as much as he has been. But Russ continues to tell David that it was a freak incident, but when he got in the helicopter, he couldn't find any sign of Zanna or the 3 bears. He said that he did a 50-mile sweep and there was no sign. David drops the phone and gets pretty upset. He starts to cry and starts yelling up at the air or maybe the dragons or at God. He just starts wailing that he wants Zanna back. He doesn't want her to be harmed. He just wants to make sure that she's okay. And Liz swoops in, gives him kind of a mom hug, starts to try to soothe him with her dragon song, and it says before too long he's still. And this is pretty shitty. I mean, the last interaction we had between David and Zanna, they got in a fight over David's writing because David had pretty much put both of them in harm's way by writing the bears to come interact with them and try to take the tooth from them while they're in Chamberlain. And so we left off with Zanna and David fighting, technically broken up, and Zanna said that she doesn't want anything to do with him. And this was, before the whole Lucy being taken. So Zanna doesn't know that. Nobody back home in America knows about Zanna. Uh, Russ did say that Bergstrom was on his way to America to tell Zanna's parents, which has got to be pretty tough. I mean, I guess they did wait 3 days. I mean, that is kind of fast for that news, because you do have to do your due diligence in checking and making sure that they, send out a search party and everything. But once you send somebody to be the messenger of death, that's usually the end of the road. That's when they call off the search parties and announce somebody as deceased. Now, there have been cases in real life where that's happened and then somebody's shown up in the woods, a week or two later or maybe a day later after they'd called him off, but it's very rare and in between. So, hopefully Zanna can be helped. We do know from Gwilanna that she's apparently under the influence of the bears, and the bears are all working together. So there's something stewing, but not really much. We have to wait to see what kind of abilities this brings out of Zanna. Because Gwilanna did say that Zanna said that she is part of Gwilanna's bloodline. And this then makes me wonder, is Zanna related to Liz and Lucy as well? Because Gwilanna does claim Gwendolyn as her own child. She did put her own essentially DNA into Gwendolyn. And if that was passed down, we do know that Liz and Lucy came from Guinevere, right? And Guinevere had Gwendolyn and so on and so forth. So if these families are intertwined, how related are Zanna and Liz and Lucy? And since Zanna is working with the bears now, and she is a Sybil that has innate magical abilities, how can the bears activate those for her or deepen her understanding or teach her of the nature's magic, especially since they can't, in my knowledge to date, communicate back and forth with her unless Bergstrom is going to reveal himself to her as Thorin, the old man, and kind of teach her the ways of the Inuit. But then at that point, why take her? If he's just going to change into his human form and show her, he could just do that at the research base and have it be a secret between them. So we'll just have to wait and see what's going on and what Bergstrom's plan is. And that's the other thing. Bergstrom's on his way to go talk to Zanna's parents, and he knows what's going on. He's Thorin. So it's interesting. He's playing a little weird mind game, not letting anybody know. Or David. I would think David would be in on it a little bit, since Bergstrom's kind of the mastermind with his groin dragon and affecting things from behind the shadows. It would be nice to get a sense of what his plan is. But he seems to be a lot like Chiron, the centaur mentor. And or not the centaur. No, I was right. Yeah, the centaur mentor. And he just keeps it close to his chest. Doesn't want to give out any kind of plot points. But that brings us to the end of that chapter, and now we're in a short chapter 28, A Close Encounter of Dragonkind. We open up this with a very cinematic view. I could see this clearly as a movie or a show. It's describing Godith kind of floating through just the empty space, right? but it's in a place where there's some fantastic lights. It says every time he does a little spinny move, there are new clusters of lights made. They're tracing out his wings and his paws. But eventually, he's brought into the orbit of the fire star that's heading kind of towards Earth. Not necessarily towards Earth, but more in the orbit of Earth. And he feels a strange pull. Once he's stopped, he could feel a form of intelligence near him, almost a void like thing. And not knowing what to do, he thought of the question that David had made. So he put his paws together, closed his eyes, and made his wish again. I wish to know about Gwaine and the fire tier. Out of nowhere, a portal opened, and he wasn't really sucked in. He made the decision to go. And it says when he entered this void, it was it was filled with nothing but everything. It gave him a higher understanding. He could see more. When it said that, I kind of took that as he can see the energies that are flowing in and out, how everything's connected through the of the world. And then he gets a sense of an intelligent being. It's more of a uh, mental being. He gets a sense coming through his scales, and then the thing talks to him in his brain, and it says that it can show Graith what he wants to know, give him a higher understanding of the world, and asks him to say. But Graith is understanding, talks to the being, says that he can't stay, he's on a mission, and he needs to help his owner. So this being introduces itself as a Fain, and says, okay, well, if you can't stay with me, can I go with you? Graith agrees, and then they head back into the world. But the chapter ends almost mysteriously. Says that what Graith had forgotten is that any time you're looking into a mirror of a metaphysical space, there's always something looking back. So I don't know if that was supposed to give us a heads up that this Fain is evil, or if there's something else in that little pocket dimension that's able to be released once the Fain is released. But that's kind of where the chapter ends. You know, we released something, whether the Fain is the thing that's evil and on in the prowl now, or something that we haven't heard of yet. Something's out. It's really starting to set up big. I'm going to have the next couple of episodes, if everything goes right, I'll have two guests. The first one will be a returning guest, Mr. Colin Reed, and we'll be kind of going through doing review of part one of this book since I've been solo this whole time this season. It's going to be nice to have a second opinion, and a different view on things, see what Colin wants to talk about and bring to the table as well. And then after that, we'll be going over the next chapter section. We're going to be doing 4 again with a surprise guest. I don't want to give it away just in case things don't work out for whatever reason, but fingers crossed, all things go well. I will have a guest that I think you guys will love. I'm super proud of being able to work with them. So, yeah, stay tuned. Thank you guys for being on this journey with me. Have a safe flight out and hit no turbulence.